cells, and it'll go right on. And it just let you all carry it, and I won't have to ask any questions. Well, all we're interested in really is your life in music.
I don't know. You might have to prompt us if we clam up or something. You know,
Yeah,
that
you
can
might
always.
have to prompt
Believe
us.
it or not, that
I've
can
never
always
done an
happen.
interview like that before, where I do all the.
Oh yeah. Well, there was this one guy once that said, "Tell me your life story and what's next."
Yeah, that one left us blank. We couldn't say a word.
You know, we went through the '70s, so sometimes blanks happen, but we lived through it anyway.
Anyway, hi folks, I'm Eddie Adcock, and this young lady over here is Martha Adcock, my partner for almost 32 years, and a wonderful musician. She's the band now. We had a band for a long time, and in 1996 we decided we wanted more time on the road just by herself, and we quit carrying a band, and she's been in the band since '96. And we've had a lot more fun by doing it that way too. And it's a pleasure not to have to worry about getting people home at the end of a show. And it used to be they had wives too, and you got to respect other people. And at the end of the show, we'd just have to take off and go home and carry them home to their wives. And that's not necessarily so anymore. We can hang out for a day if we find a place we like. And we do that occasionally. What do you think, Martha?
Well, you know, if you wanted to start at the beginning, you could tell people that we're a couple of farm kids. Eddie's a Virginia boy and I'm a South Carolina girl, and both of us grew up being interested in music. My family was very musical. His was not so much, but so he really was the musical prize in his family, and it developed, his talent did, despite a lot of odds. And early on he developed into one of the finest musicians in bluegrass music. And so I've been thrilled to be able to be by his side for almost 32 years now. I grew up playing piano. I studied classical music for 11 years, but it never really satisfied anything in me like folk music did first, and then old-timey, and then bluegrass. And I decided that's what I wanted to devote my life to, but I don't think Eddie had any problem deciding or making any of those decisions early on, did you? Except you just wanted to get off the farm and quit throwing hay bales up and get out of there and play music, probably.
I wanted to get off the farm. I was throwing bales of hay 5 bales high on the downhill side of a wagon. Playing a banjo is easier than that. And I heard this announcement on radio, a fiddle player by the name of Smokey Graves, who was a very famous fiddle player in those days, and he was advertising he needed a banjo, 5-string banjo player. At the time, I was playing mandolin and guitar, and tenor banjo, but I wasn't playing a 5-string banjo. And I had a calf, and I sold the calf, and my mama signed for me to get a 5-string banjo. Meantime, I wrote Smokey a letter, said I'd like to come try for the job. And but it'll take 2 weeks to do it. That was to give me time to get the banjo and at least familiarize myself with it in some form or other. And I went there, and he said, well, I can tell one thing. I said, what's that? He said, you're not a 5-string banjo player. But he said, I'm going to keep you on anyway because I think you will be in a short order. And so he did. So in about...
Now, what year was that?
That was 1954,
54,
I bet, guess, somewhere along in there.
I'm writing a book on Eddie, so I'm supposed to know those
She's
things.
more up on it than I am.
Actually, I'm writing the book so neither one of us will have to remember those things anymore. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
And your farm was where were you? Where were you raised?
The farm was in Virginia. Is that what you said? Farm was up in Virginia, near Scottsville, Virginia. And Scottsville, Virginia was a little town that 40 years before I was born. That's how all of Lynchburg, Roanoke, Charlottesville, That's where everybody, all the little towns that were springing up in those days, got their goods from Scott's Landing, which became Scottsville. That's as far up the James River as the flatboats could go. They had to stop at Scott's Landing, which was Scottsville. And then they'd go by team to all points west of there. And Thomas Jefferson's real famous in that area. And he's one of Martha's heroes and one of my heroes, too.
Now, was your family musical?
No, not much. Martha's was, like she said, but mine was, I had a brother who brought instruments home, and that's how I got to play. He brought banjos and guitars and mandolins home, and I just tried to learn to play them and found that I could learn to play them. I was self-taught. So it was Bill, his name was Bill, William, and I really think he's the reason I ended up playing, because without the instruments, surely I would have never played. And thank you, Bill, for bringing them home. You gave me a life of poverty. Appreciate that.
Well, you had your older brother Harvey played harmonica, and Bill, of course, he played a little bit.
Yeah.
And your next older brother, Frank,
he played a little teeny bit.
Played enough to aggravate you. His sister Nancy sang. Clarence played a little bit. Your other brother. There was
He
seven
played
kids.
a little bit. He played. They all played, but yeah, I don't know. I guess you could call it playing. I reckon. I'm not sure. Not like her family actually could play. My family loved trying, and that's kind of the way it worked out. I remember my brother Bill. He couldn't keep time. I mean, you 1, 2, 3, 4. It'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like it was awful. His timing. You couldn't play with him. But he'd grab that fiddle and put it right. He'd say, "Hang on, chillins," and he'd start playing. And it was terrible. But bless his heart, he loved it. He loved it a lot. All my family loved music. We used to listen to the Grand Ole Opry and the Old Dominion Barn Dance and Wheeling Jamboree, the world's original jamboree. And I remember during the war we'd take the battery out of the back of the radio during the day and put it in the warm oven. After it was cut off, it was still warm. That'd charge it up enough to get the Grand Ole Opry on Saturday night. And that was our entertainment, which was really good entertainment. We enjoyed that. And you could hear a pin drop in our house during that time. That's about the only time. If you made a noise at all, my daddy would look at you, and only took him twice before Mama would whip you. So, it was a wonderful time. I tell you what, the world has turned into me, 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 and in that world where you had to have stamps to get sugar, stamps to get coffee, stamps to get gasoline, tires, stamps for everything. It was a time of sharing. If you had your garden growing and you'd had some hogs to kill, you'd give away the meat and give away the garden. This world, as I know it today, couldn't survive in that world because there's too much me, me, me. There would be no sharing. And I don't even think the people that I know today, there's not enough of them to where it could make a thing like that work. And some would give and some would take. And I don't think that would work out too well, because the ones that were just taking and not giving would throw a shortage on everybody. So, but it was a wonderful time, even though we didn't have much. And I remember when I was a kid, there was only like 7 or 8 cars that come to my town. And one of the reasons, of course, was there were some more cars at home, but they didn't have fuel for them. But I tell people like that now. I'll tell people my hometown when I was a kid, and I'd say, you ain't that old, but when I was a kid, there'd be 6 or 7 cars that'd be in the whole town, and there'd be 50 or 60 buggies and wagons and stuff like that. There was, at that time, 3 blacksmith shops going full tilt. And there wasn't any actual garages. There was a Ford Motor Company and a Chevrolet company, but they did some repair, but they about folded because they couldn't sell vehicles from 1941 till 1946. So they couldn't survive on that. There wasn't enough cars to survive, so they kind of just hung on somehow, like the rest of us, and survived. But there was a couple gas stations in town. They didn't do very well either because during that time it was a trade-off for everything. And the gas station owners got free vegetables from our garden just like everybody else did. And my daddy was real generous, real free-hearted, wouldn't take anything. And when he gave something, he wouldn't want anything in return. We were very well off, and actually the wealthy people of the neighborhood were worse off than we were during that time. And they used to come out and get vegetables and meat from us, and we had plenty of them. I remember each year my daddy would raise more hogs because he had to give away so much. He'd raise more hogs every year. And until 1946, I think by 1946 we was killing 12 hogs, and I mean big hogs. And we were also hunting deer, and rabbit and squirrel and everything. But we give away a lot of food. But anyway, that's kind of my background. The thing that got me started, wouldn't trade it for nothing. I really know what sharing's all about. And I think it made me a better musician too. I know I'm not a competitive musician. I don't compete. I play like me and play like myself. I have my own style, and that come from not having a teacher in the early days.
Well, did you listen to the radio, and
we listened.
Who'd you pattern yourself?
I didn't pattern myself after anybody. I just self-taught.
But you
People
listened.
don't understand how you can do that now, but we had the radio on Saturday nights. We didn't have the radio the rest of the time during all that period of time because of the battery. You couldn't get a battery. So we just nursed that one battery for several years. And then my brother Bill found another old battery that wasn't charged up, and we started using that, putting it in the oven and using it. But we made it through till 46 when we could buy a battery again. And but I never patterned myself after anybody, but I had a lot of heroes. And we're all a product of everything the brain has ever experienced. None of us are shy of that. But what goes in can come out your way. And you don't have to be a copy of anybody. Just take all the input and use what you got, and God gave me the gift to do that. So the Eddie Adcock style is alive and well, and I've survived pretty good and actually paid the bills and got a roof over my head.
Tell them about the Victory Theater there in town. There was a theater in Eddie's town called Victory Hall. It was built early in the century, and even though Scottsville was a small town, all the big names in country music and other kinds of music too came through there, and of course everybody came from the surrounding area and filled the little place. But as well as listening to the radio, Eddie was able to hear a lot of the fine musicians of the day, and
the best.
Well, tell a little bit about
the
Victory Theater.
I remember pulling curtains for Hank Williams. That's one of the people that come through there. But Roy Acuff, I kind of worked 2 coal in the stoves. We had 2 old potbelly coal stoves on each side of that Victory Hall. And I kind of helped do that along with Bobby Spencer, a friend and a magician and a guy that I grew up with who has been the mayor of Scottsville since, and probably one of the most prominent people in the town. We're still close friends, but he and I worked at the Victory Theater as youngsters, and I pulled a curtain sometimes. Bobby pulled a curtain sometimes. Every now and we responsible for filling the popcorn machine. You know, we didn't have couldn't even buy drinks in the Victory Hall. Go across the street and get them, but we did have a popcorn machine. And I remember Roy Acuff,
Carter family?
the Carter family. Yeah, you'll have to remember these. I'm not
Well,
doing too
you can
well.
just about name anybody.
Anybody.
Who was anybody back then during the 40s, and they came through.
Flatt and Scruggs, Mac Wiseman.
Isn't that where you found out that Earl didn't play the banjo with a flat pick? You found out that he played with a thumb and finger pick.
Well, actually, I hadn't
must have been an
hadn't
epiphany.
even paid any attention to Earl playing the 5-string when I first heard him. Earl didn't excite me. Forgive us, God. I mean, he's supposed to be the person who excited everybody, but Earl couldn't even build my interest in playing a banjo. I didn't even want to play a 5-string banjo when I heard Earl.
Was it when you saw Ralph Stanley or heard him
Ralph
on the
Stanley
radio?
made me want to play the 5-string banjo, and that was years later. Earl did not do anything for me. I don't know why. At the time, I didn't like his tone. It was too much, at the time, too mellow or something. Wasn't bright enough. Now, Bill Monroe excited me on the mandolin, and a lot of Toby Stroud band members and different people excited me, but Earl wasn't one of the people who really did it for me. I remember telling some years later, I went up to Ralph Stanley, and I said, Ralph, I don't know if you know it or not, but you're the reason I play 5-string banjo. And here was his answer. And he never said anything. Never got too much out of Ralph. He used to speak to me before the down the mountain or
Oh, brother?
brother thing. He used to speak to me every time he see me. And he doesn't speak to me anymore, but he doesn't speak to Mac Wiseman either, so it's okay. I figure if he don't speak to Mac, then why would he speak to me? But anyway, I guess he loves being rich. But,
Tell him a little bit about Smokey Graves and when he played at the Victory Theater, what kind of a performer he was.
well, Smokey was probably the hottest thing that come to the Victory Theater, above Roy, above Mac, above Lester and Earl, Monroe. Monroe come there with Earl. That's where I first seen Earl.
Why don't we all know about Smokey?
Smokey was much like me. You're a leader. Leaders don't get very far on earth. I'm not complaining, but Smokey was a leader, not a follower. And I got my education from Smokey. And he said some people have to create, and the ones that are creating are never going to be real big in this business. It's the ones that jump on the bandwagon. When you create something in the beginning stages of that, you don't have an audience for it. They have to grow into it. They're not smart enough to pick up on it. I'm not saying people are dumb, but it's way ahead of their thinking patterns, and they can't really grasp it. So until the masses grasp something, then the creators by that time have gone on to something else, and the followers are picking up on something they did 20 years ago. Well, the creator doesn't want to do what he did 20 years ago, so he's not going to jump back on the bandwagon. So throughout life, Smokey stayed ahead of the masses. And he died and went away from here ahead of the masses. I mean, in the 55, 56, Smokey was playing rock and roll, so playing rhythm and blues, playing bluegrass, playing country, and playing pop, all in one package. Now, that fit our town real well, but it didn't fit enough places to where it would work. I mean, in our town, I don't know why our town, but even I come from our town, and maybe the other people in our town are somewhat like me. Whatever the reason, I don't know, but they're not. They seem to be ahead of their time, a lot of the people in Scottsville. And a lot of rednecks too. But there's a lot of people who seem to be ahead of their time. And Smokey would pack the theater every time he would play it, even more than Roy Acuff and people like that. And Roy was the hottest thing hit the universe in the 40s and early 50s. And but Smokey would actually outdraw him in our town. And even though Smokey would fill the theater twice, and Roy would only fill it once. Everybody else would fill it once, for the most part. I think Hank Williams would do a second show, but it wouldn't be full. So that's why Smokey didn't ever make it. When he played fiddle, he would go out in left field and play things even Scottsville would say, "What is he doing?" But I could follow it. I understood it, and the band that was playing with him understood it. The fact is, our steel player in that band, he actually come up with a pedal steel. I don't know. People don't. Just one person is not the only person that thinks of something. In this world of millions and millions of people, 3 or 4 people think of the same thing. So I'm not saying Bud Isaacs got it from Herman Yarborough, who was our steel player. But what I will say is Herman Yarborough was doing it 3 years before Bud put out Bud's Bounce, which was the first recorded pedal steel. Actually, he was doing it 5 years before that. So it may have been 6 years. When I first saw Herman Yarborough, he had 1 pedal on his steel guitar, and then the next time I seen him, he had 2 on it. And he stood up and worked his pedals. And that was the beginning stages of pedal steel. And that was 1951, I guess. And 6 or 7 years before we had pedal steels. And it was an obvious thing to do. But anyway.
Was your family proud of you when you went to work with the biggest entertainer, the area's favorite entertainer?
Oh, yeah.
I guess your mother was your biggest fan.
Oh, yeah. My mother was. I remember my daddy, me playing so long and so many hours. He would try to figure out jobs for me to do so I wouldn't play all the time. But if I wasn't working, I was playing. And I remember Daddy would say, oh man, and Mama would immediately say, now you leave him alone, he's got to practice. And that'd be the end of that. But that drove Daddy crazy, and my mama just loved me to do it. I actually played, and I know there's a lot of kids out there that'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because that fever hits you, you can't get away from it. But I played till my fingers were bleeding, and Mama got mad because I'd get blood on my clothes. But I wouldn't stop playing because I was bleeding. And if you're not, now we have videos of all kinds. I have 2 videos, teaching videos out of guitar and a banjo. And we have musicians and workshops, and so many of them is willing to teach you. I am. If you ask me, I'll show you anything I know. And
And then
Okay, well, let me just finish up on what I was talking about in case you splice that together. Anyway, you had a lot of people. You have a lot of people today to teach you, and you have music to, many ways to learn. And you don't have to play till your fingers bleed so much, although some of the kids I'm sure do. But when you're self-taught, it takes just weeks to come up with a little tiny morsel of something. Weeks, and that's the big difference between today and back then. Smokey, I think getting back to Smokey, I think the reason he drew a lot of people to his shows more than anybody else, there wasn't much entertainment back then. There wasn't any TV at all. And the people weren't going to see Frank Sinatra coming through, and they weren't going to see this favorite or that favorite, and they could go see Smokey and get a morsel of everything. Being with Smokey, I know that when some of Martha's and my records have a little, I've often thought of it at times as pop grass, and a rock grass, or something like that. I think, actually I'm discovering a lot of things in this conversation as I talk. Hadn't really looked at some of the things the way I'm looking at them right now, but I think Smokey actually is the reason I am this way today. My music just covers everything. My banjo playing, there's nothing typical at all about my banjo playing. Nothing is typical about it because I play Telecaster licks on the banjo that I played on the guitar, and I play classical tunes, show tunes, Exodus, the movie Exodus. I went to that movie, I saw it. I believe it was Charlton Heston starred in that. Anyway, I went home and started playing that tune. I just had to play that tune. I loved the tune so much, I had to play that tune. So I worked up Exodus and Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto, and just a lot of things I've worked up through the years that were not normal for the banjo 40 years ago, 45 years ago. And the kids will come up with stuff like that today, and I think they kicked it off. And maybe they did too. Maybe they did again. You know what I mean? That's the way music is. As long as they approach it without taking a takeoff of what I did and thought of it on their own, then they did it too. You know what I mean? It's I ain't gonna hog the show here, but I think one of the things that kids that are learning today really need to remember is, okay, so if they get some of their chops and get enough together to play a little bit, maybe they should forget learning from other people. And if you do it indirectly, it becomes yours. If it's a direct hit off of somebody else, it's still the other guy's. And you'll never play Foggy Mountain Breakdown as good as Earl Scruggs did it. He come up with it. So you can't beat a guy at his own style. And if you do, it's not his style, is it? So it's impossible. And even if you're playing Foggy Mountain Breakdown today better than Earl Scruggs, people are going to say, man, he's almost as good as Earl Scruggs. And I can't stand that. I can't stand to be compared to somebody else, so you'll never hear me trying to copy somebody else, because I'll do a few licks of other people's, If Earl would come around, I'd do a couple of his licks just because I know him, just because I know the instrument. If Don Reno would come around, I'd do a couple of his licks just because I knew the instrument. If Ralph Stanley come, I do the Foggy Mountain Breakdown lick like he does, which is totally wrong from the right way to do that tune. He'd just double finger it here. He wouldn't carry a thumb over or anything like that, or do a back and forth action like that. He just go ding ding, link ding ding, link ding ding, and using this finger, bing bing, bing bing, which is the wrong way. But I'd do it that way too if I saw Ralph coming into or around one of our shows. So, but as far as actually doing it for seriously, and when they weren't around, I wouldn't do it when they weren't around, because I just have no interest in copying other people. I admire everybody who comes up with their own stuff more than I do the ones that are copying. But when you've got, why you don't need to have your fingers bleeding if you can have somebody get you started nowadays. So there's nothing wrong with going out and finding somebody to help get you started, so you don't have to go through what Earl went through, I went through, Don Reno went through, Ralph went through, the people who are self-taught. There's a lot of hours you got to spend that you wouldn't have to spend if you could just go up to Earl and say, Earl, would you show me this or show me that? That'd get you started. And then you need to back off and let God give you the same thing he gave me and he gives us all. And that's that feed. And if you've got it down here, you've developed a little bit here, it's coming in here, and it can come out here. And I don't think of it as God's talking to me or God's speaking to me. I just can't explain, other than saying the programming of the mind, and now it's coming out here. Why did I think of these certain things and certain spots and certain inspirations come in? I think inspiration comes from something bigger than all of us. And if you cut that off by just learning other people's stuff, then you miss the inspiration. And therefore, you become a follower, and you'll make a lot of money. But you are not a creator. You're just a follower. You'll make the big bucks, though, because a lot of the people that are on top and winning all the awards at IBMA every year are taking something that they already heard and doing it again and making it work just again, you know. Some of them are even doing the same breaks and the same singing versions, you know. You know, like years ago, Bluegrass go, hit me, hey, ho, and everything would be a H starting with it. And the boy that just sung Man of Constant Sorrow on Oh Brother, I am a man of constant sorrow, you know, he's doing the same thing. But they did it back then because they were hicks, you know, they were not bright. But the kids come along today and they'll copy that. They'll pull it out and copy that. I am a man of constant sorrow is not the way we talk. And I'm not going to do that. So I won't make the money that boy makes, because I'm not going to do that.
Well, there's a lot more that needs to be said yet. Tell about how much you had to want to play music back in the late 40s and the early 50s, because it was not near as easy to have a career playing music on the road then as it is now, because now we've got interstates, we've got cushy motels, you've got Cracker Barrels at every exit. But back when he was traveling, when they would have 5 or 6 guys in one car with the bass in between them, and gas stations few and far between, and no money anyway, it was a different time, and you really had to be more than a musician. You had to be a real trooper, which is still a term that means a lot to us. But tell them a little bit about what that was like back then.
Well, I remember times when you were like the U.S. highway. Let's just take 40. That's U.S. Highway 40. Goes out of D.C. Even when I was with a Country Gentleman, which was quite a few years later after I started. But even then, US Highway 40, which is a major route, when you met a vehicle, you had to put 2 wheels in the side ditch. And the road was shaped like this. I mean, you had to drive on the middle. If you got on the side, you'd have to hold the steering wheel like this because it would be trying to pull you on into the bank. But you have to get over there when a truck was coming because there wasn't room for 2 vehicles to pass on the blacktop part. I remember when it would take 6 hours to get to the next food stop, and this was back east. Now that's when Martha and I started working 30 years ago. We'd go across the desert and there wouldn't be any place to get food, and there's somewhat like that still on the bigger deserts. But for this to be back east, you wouldn't think, people couldn't imagine that right now. Your average speed would be 30 to 35 mile an hour would be a good average speed. I remember you can go to Wheeling Jamboree, Wheeling, West Virginia, where the Country Gentleman, when I was working with the Country Gentleman, you can go from D.C. to there in about 5.5 hours. I remember when we'd leave the day before to get there. And if we didn't, we'd leave at like 3 in the morning and drive all morning, all day long, and finally get there in time to play the show. Be 3 o'clock Saturday morning, 3 a.m. And wouldn't get into Wheeling until 6 o'clock at night.
How did you eat? How did you sleep? How did you
We
clean
took
up?
food with us because there wasn't any of that. There were motels, hotels in the cities. There were hardly any motels along the road. There were a few bed and breakfast places, but you would go 200 miles without seeing a bed and breakfast place, so. And even when you got there, it was full because they only had 2 or 3 rooms in those places. So there was a lot of sleeping in the cars. That's your only choice. And so, thank God, Vienna sausages and sardines have been around a long time in the cans. And that kept us going pretty good. That's as good as any of that junk you eat nowadays. I still, Martha and I carry Vienna sausage and
You betcha.
stuff like that in the truck till this day.
Canned spinach.
Because,
Beanie weenies.
yeah, because it's just as good as the junk you can buy. It's all fast food. All of it is, including the canned stuff. So,
Where did you clean up before a show? In a gas station?
gas stations usually. People were more friendly back then. There wasn't this me thing that we have today. Nowadays you go ask, especially in certain parts of the country, you say, "Give me a change you could change just 20 for me." Would I look like a bank? Or can I use your restroom? Are you gonna buy anything? That was unheard of back then. I mean, that was just unheard of. And it's so awful till this day. I mean, that we've got to, people have got to be that, I've seen this girl pull up to an old bum stand at a stop sign many a time and give them anywhere between $5 and $20. And we're poor people. I mean, we're not rich people. We just go from day to day and make a living.
We do okay. As long as we've got plenty of money for paper towels and toilet paper, we're good.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
So,
No, we do okay. We do okay, but we're certainly, we don't ride around in brand new vehicles, and we don't live in mansions or McMansions either. A lot of them nowadays, a mansion on a quarter of an acre.
so tell us about when you started with Josh and how long you played and what you played and all that.
You got Bill and Mac and then Bill.
Yeah,
And then
I played.
Country Gentleman and then your bands and
Okay,
then Josh.
Okay, Well, Josh is actually just a record. Yeah, I guess I'll get to Mac. Okay, I think I'll get to Mac Wiseman, who was right after Smokey Graves. I guess Mac Wiseman's the best job I ever had in my life. In 1955, I made $90 a week with Mac Wiseman. What do y'all think of that? I mean, that's a lot of money. In 1955, I haven't made that kind of money since. It was more money than I could possibly spend. I'd send half of it home, and I still couldn't spend the rest of it. He paid me really good. He treated me really good. He's also my best bluegrass friend till this day. I mean, sorry everybody else, I don't mean any harm, but Mac is one of those guys, when you get down, if you need help, he'll help you. He'll tell you not to tell anybody. Here I'm doing it on, I'm recording it. But if he's your friend, he's not going to do it if he don't know you. But I've had to ask Mac for help twice in my life, and he was there both times. He would be there again if I needed it. Fortunately, we don't need it anymore, but if I did, he would be there. And I call him every week, every other week at the longest, and ask him how he's doing, make sure if he needs any help, I'll go over and help him. All he's got to do is ask.
You toured the USA and Canada with him when he was having big hits back in
he was having big
55.
Hit
46.
records. And I was fortunate enough to be with him during that time. I remember us drawing, Mac Wiseman drawing over 3,000 people. They call that a successful festival now when they have 3,000 people. I remember show after show after show, Mac Wiseman just by himself. Sometimes Lee Moore would be with us, the coffee drinking Nighthawk. But Mac Wiseman drawing 3,500 people by himself. And people, I don't know, I don't quite understand everything all about it, but they say bluegrass is bigger now, and overall I guess it is, but there's no single bluegrass artist. I mean, Del McCary is charging $12,000-15,000 a day, and it would be a dream for him to be able to draw 3,000 people. A dream that he would never, he may see it someday, but until this point in time, he hasn't seen it. A lot of the bluegrass people charge a lot of money, but they don't, at a festival, but they don't really draw the people. Bluegrass people putting promoters out of business left and right by, when they go to a show by themselves and nobody else there, they'll draw 150 to 300 people. And on a good, really extremely wild day, they'll draw 400 people, which you won't see very often. Maybe the most popular band once or twice a year. But yet and still they charge $12,000, which doesn't, at a festival. So if you have 10 bands at a festival and he's getting $12,000, how do they think that works out on the slide rule there? It doesn't work out at all. So they just decided, I think when Ricky Skaggs come back into bluegrass from country, he thought he'd bring his prices on into bluegrass. And so when Ricky started getting it, all the other bluegrassers says, well, if he's getting it, I should get it. I ought to be able to get that. And, so right now, people like Mountain Heart and Ricky and Del McCary, in my opinion, overcharging a lot. It's none of my business, but I think they ought to let some of the rest of the people have a better shot at the promoters than to put them all out of business before they get a shot. An example would be, and I'll quit mentioning names because I realize I'm doing wrong there. But Martha and I went to California on the northern route, which is over through Denver and Salt Lake City. One year we went and we had 3 jobs or 4 jobs out from Denver to California. Following year, they'd all, when I called them, they'd all been put out of business by a booking agent right here in town. The first guy of the high-priced guys had put all those people out the following year out of business, and I couldn't use that route anymore because the jobs weren't enough jobs because they'd been overcharged and put out of business, charging unbelievable prices.
Well, you're just getting ahead of yourself a little bit. You work with Bill Monroe next in early part of '58, and talk a little bit about
I guess they're going to edit this.
what you learned from him, if you learned anything at all, and also how the money was with him during those days when Elvis Presley had hit.
Yeah, well, the bottom fell out of Bluegrass in 55, 56 when Elvis hit. Mac Wiseman, being a smart man, got off the road.
You were his last
Probably,
banjo player.
I was his last banjo player. He dropped a band, became an A&R man for pretty much a major label, Dot Records, in California, and moved to California and became an A&R man. And I quit and went to D.C. and did my own thing for a while. Had a 4.5-hour TV show, I think. It was during that time on a beginning TV station. I can't remember what channel it was, but it was in Norfolk, Virginia. And then I was singing rock and roll, Elvis type rock and roll during that time. Then Bill Monroe called me and asked me if I wanted a job, and he said, asked me how much I wanted, and Mac had been paying me $90, so I just said $90. He said, I'll pay you that. Well, he never did. He got close. $35 a week was as close as he ever got. And I remember the second or third week I was with him, I went and asked for my paycheck, and I said, Bill, could I get some money? He said, why is it every banjo player that starts to work for me is always broke? This was the second or third week. He already owed me 3 times 90. And he gave me like 15 or 20 bucks, and that was it. And I stayed around a little longer, but I realized he wasn't making it, and he didn't have it. And
There was one time you split
$17 in Harlan, Kentucky, playing a dirt floor theater. He took in $17 totally, and I think that's the only money we made that week. So it's, you're not making it, you don't have it. So I give him the benefit of the doubt, and I still think Monroe was a good person and worked very hard to have his music and to see that it survived. And I think we're all in the bluegrass industry benefiting from Bill Monroe and what he did before us. And I left Bill Monroe, and I couldn't handle it anymore, and I went to D.C. area, and the Country Gentlemen had just started. The way they started, in July 4th, 1957, I was playing the banjo playing the rhythm guitar for Buzz Busby.
This was before you went to work with Monroe, too.
Oh, yeah, that was. Let me cover this. Just before I went to work with Monroe, Buzz Busby needed a rhythm guitar player. I went to work for him playing rhythm guitar. This is an important part of this tape. So I went to work with Bill Monroe after this happened. Rhythm guitar, I was playing with Buzz Busby. Buzz Busby was playing the mandolin. Bill Emerson was playing the 5-string banjo, and Vance Truell was playing the bass. That was the band. And after a job in Bailey's Crossroads, July 4th, we went to North Beach. We're drinking and having a party and having fun after the show. And on the way back, we were all asleep, and so was the driver. And we run into a corner pole and put us all in the hospital. And Bill Emerson, the banjo player, didn't go with us. So to replace me, he called Charlie Waller to play rhythm guitar. He called John Duffy to play the mandolin. He called Larry Leahy to play the bass to replace Vance Truell from Louisiana. And he played the banjo himself. He just called those three guys. That was the first Country Gentleman. That's how the Country Gentleman got started. And that was July 4th, 1957 when they started. Well, after I got out of the hospital, that's when Bill Monroe called me. And I went to work, and I told the story about Bill Monroe. You can do that again. Times were tough. I come back to the D.C. area, and I was doing sheet metal work, I think. I went to work as doing sheet metal work. I had done sheet metal work before. And I made good money, cut my hands all up. Couldn't play hardly. Sometimes they were so cut up. But when I went back there, Charlie Waller and John Duffy come over and wanted me to play the banjo and play with them and sing with them. And I didn't want to really get back into the music business at the time, but I was the one holding all the cards because John Duffy hadn't ever worked for anybody famous. Charlie had only worked for Buzz Busby. Buzz Busby never did make it to the famous category. He's well known amongst bluegrass. And John Duffy and Charlie had never worked for anybody. I had already worked for Smokey and Bill Monroe and Mac Wiseman. Bill Monroe and Mac Wiseman being the biggest stars in bluegrass music. So I had the calling cards all on my side. Everything was in my favor. So when they come to ask me to go to work with them, I still had that creative thing flowing in my blood, and I said, they were Osborne brother clones, Jimmy Martin and the Osborne brothers. They sung mostly all of their material. And I told them I'd go to work with them if they would stop doing that and we'd start doing our own stuff and find our own songs to record. And they did, and we did. And I remember we did they were interviewing us on stage in Seattle, Washington at Winterfest out there. And Bill Emerson and me are on stage, and Charlie Waller and some of the other country gentlemen through the years. And they asked Bill Emerson, they said, "Bill, when did the country gentleman click?" And Bill looked over at me and said, "When that guy right there joined the band." I almost cried because Bill could have just kept his mouth shut and give some garbage, and like most musicians would have, wanting all the glory if they could get it, And Bill said that, and I've run around with Bill earlier. We rode around and wrecked cars together, and I loved Bill, and that just clinched my love for him right there, because he was able to be a big person and tell what he thought to be what it was and speak what he thought was true. And I went over and grabbed him and hugged him, and I said, "Well, yeah, I guess because I insisted on doing original material that kicked us off, but I said, you're the man who started the Country Gentleman, because to replace all the band members, you're the one who picked up the phone and called all those people. So the creator of the Country Gentleman is Bill Emerson. He's the one who started it. Through the years, even still today, they give him Charlie Waller because he's the Country Gentleman. And when I left because I was tired of doing the same old thing, and I wanted to get more into creative thing, and I created Newgrass when I left the Country Gentleman with a group called Second Generation.
Where'd you get your material for the Country Gentleman that was so different from
the
everybody?
Library of Congress and from old songbooks, and and stuff like that, and songs that I knew and songs that we all knew that they just didn't think was cool to record because just an old song I knew, and well, let's make it that old song you knew a cool song. Let's work it up to where it is a cool song again, and then that's the way we did it, and it worked out for us. And one thing I'll say about me and Charlie and John, we never had to work at our trio. I mean, that was really our arrangements. People come up and ask me all the time, how did y'all get those arrangements? And I said, well, basically, sometimes just before we run out on stage, John or Charlie or I would say, you ever heard this old song? Hey, grab a part on this. And that would be the arrangement of that song right there. Oh, you take the first break, I'll take a second. I'll turn it around and then you take the last half. And no thought. It was just do. That's all we, just do. There's no big secret message hidden anywhere or
I don't know if you ought to say that there was no thought. There was just...
We kicked it around. We blended and matched so well.
There was like telepathy or something.
Yes, it was weird. It was really weird. We would sing, and I'd be singing baritone, and then I'd switch to tenor. I'd say, I believe I'd sound better if I went from baritone to low tenor there. Or Charlie, why don't you go to low tenor and let John do high lead, but Charlie would be doing lead. And we switched parts, and we'd do that 10 times a song sometimes. I mean, just back and forth all the way through the song, but that blend would be just really right there. Because I wouldn't sound good sometimes on a particular line doing baritone all the way through. And so I'd let Charlie sing that baritone line, and I'd go to his part, and I'd sound better on his part than I would on that part, and vice versa. And we just switch parts around like that all the time. That's how the country gentleman, but we got to where we did that without any work at all. We just started singing a song, and we'd feel those places that we knew we wouldn't sound good. We'd feel them as we come up to them, and we'd switch automatically. A lot of songs we'd sing on stage for the first time. Never have sung the song before, but we all knew the song. We'd just sing it. And we would do those part things the first time without talking it over. We'd do those part switching things just as natural as breathing. I remember the resonance was so close in our harmonies in early days that when we started playing the colleges, that we'd blow up sound systems, the vibrations into the speakers and the power amp not being able to hold it. It wasn't a volume thing so much as was that resonance in the speakers, that vibration and their voices matching so well and hitting those speakers and just in a constant battle and overloading the output tubes, and those tubes would just blow up. It's weird.
Can we take a little break here? I've got to...
Telepathy, I don't quite which.
Yeah, you were talking about you and John.
Well, I was
Charles.
talking about the fact that I didn't have to, we didn't have to, there was a telepathy thing going on between the three of us, because in the beginning stages, we could pick a new song and sing it on stage after we'd worked together 3 or 4 years. For the first time, we could just sing it on stage. We'll not have worked on it at all, but we all felt like we knew enough the words to get through it, even though we figured we might mess up a little bit. We figured it wouldn't be really bad, and we didn't care. We'd give it our best shot. So we'd sing songs for the first time on stage, and we'd get through them. And there it goes back to that thing now. I can't believe that the song tutored us the emotion of the song brought the words back to us in the beginning stages. I think it had to be something similar to or telepathy, ESP of some sort. And because I believe the way we get through those songs is I'd pick up the brain waves of one of the guys who knew the words. You know, he knew this line, but he didn't know the next line, and he'd pick up the next line from me, maybe. Or maybe he'd pick it up from Charlie. Maybe we'd both pick it up from Charlie. Or Charlie would pick it up from John, and I would too. I think we had an ESP thing going. And this was before there was much talk about ESP. And so when I read about ESP, I immediately was a believer in it because of my 1957, my 1958 experience with the Country Gentleman. I figured, hey, there's something to that because I was thinking about the Country Gentleman. And then later on, when we started having reunions years after we broke up, we could be standing on the sideline and not remember enough of the song to even get through it. And I still couldn't, to this moment, I could not remember enough of the Country Gentleman songs to get through it. And now I would probably not be able to remember it because they're gone. John and Charlie are gone. If I got up and sang these songs with someone else right now, the song wouldn't carry me through it. Only Charlie and John would carry me through it. I can't remember. I remember recording some of these songs just lately, tributes to the Country Gentleman. They'd ask me to play on their album, and I'd go do it. And I would end up having to stop and remember the words or get the words from somebody. I never had to do that with the Country Gentleman. It was just like eating cake. It was the easiest thing in the world to do. All we had to do is, none of us would remember the song off stage. We were getting ready to go. They were introducing us. We were going to go out there not remembering any of these songs. And we were going to go out there and do a whole show of 50 minutes to an hour and not forget any words, or maybe forget one or two words. But no drastic deal. And to be able to go out there and sing every one of the words from the three of us, it just takes me back to those old songs we'd sing for the first time on stage. Has to be something like ESP, Alive and Well, working between me and Charlie and John. I have no other answer. Now, you had a good answer yourself a minute ago when you said the emotion of a song bringing the words back. And I'm sure a lot of that was true. But in the beginning stages when we'd never sung the song before together, it had to be ESP. And I think later on was ESP. And Martha, you know, we found she'll think something, and I'll say, I just thought of that, you know. In my mind, I didn't say nothing. And vice versa. We do that all the time. And we pretty much know sometimes what the other guy's going to say before they say it.
I think when you're playing with somebody that you're being creative with, and particularly if you've played with them for a long, long time, I think those things occur more easily. I think that's just part of the way that you work, that you have to be attuned with somebody that closely. It's, I don't know if people working in an office in accounting ever do that, but I know musicians probably do it a whole lot.
Well, the Bible says, you know, I'm not going to be preaching religion here, but the Bible says thoughts have wings. And says it in two or three different ways. You know, one is you have a thought, a good thought, it goes out and it can't find a home and it comes back and lands on you, back in your own head when you have good thoughts. But the Bible says it in two or three different ways, backs up ESP in the way people wrote 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. So I guess the Bible is the reading, the words in the Bible are, I don't know, some of them are ancient. And even though I think the Bible was put together in 1500 or something like that, but it was gathering up old stories and stuff like that and stuck together. Anyway.
Did y'all write any material for the Country Gentleman?
Yeah, we wrote. I did, and John did. Charlie didn't. Charlie bless his heart, he had a free ride. A lot of people till this day give him so much credit. The credit he deserves is he opened his mouth and golden tones come spilling out onto the audience. That's the credit he deserves. Did he have to work at that? No. Charlie was a natural. Didn't have to work at hardly anything. When IBMA was going to give the awards away, Charlie Waller and Lynn Holtzclaw got together and decided Charlie Waller should get it. All the IBMA awards, Hall of Honor. And I remember going to that meeting, and then I remember also at one point the guy that owns Pine Castle Records it said something like, well, he thought that Charlie Waller ought to get it, and thank you, Tom, because you made me mad enough to jump up and start fighting for my own rights. Because John and I did all the work. We all did all the booking. We did all the fixing of the vehicles. We kept us on the road, kept the bookings coming in, did all the business, every bit of the business, did all their song arrangements, come up with all the material. Charlie just was riding along for the ride. So in a room full of people, of 40, 50 people, I finally got a chance to speak, and I just said to everybody, I said, I'll tell you what you can do here. I said, do you want to give the award to, okay. At IBMA, we were having a meeting to decide who to give that award to, rather to give it to Charlie, which Lynn Holtzclaw and Charlie had got together and pretty much decided they were going to just give it to Charlie because he was a longest-lasting country gentleman, and he'd been there all along. But in truth, Charlie was afraid to try anything else. He had his bread and butter, so he wasn't going to try anything else because he never did any of the booking, he never did any of the arrangements. He never did any of the business whatsoever. When we were doing all that, Charlie was down on the boat with a girl on the Potomac River, and that's the way it was. And he left all the work to me and John. And so when they had this meeting to decide who to give the award to, Lynn Holtzclaw and him had then decided, Charlie decided he wanted the award. And Charlie had this self-righteous thing about him. I loved him, but he had this self-righteous thing. He really thought he should get the award for riding this train to glory. I mean, if it was built by me and Duffy, and we've used the ingredients of me and Duffy and Waller to make that thing work. And then when Tom Riggs of Pine Castle Records made me mad enough to get up and speak for myself, and I may have sat there and not said nothing, but he said he thought that Charlie Waller ought to get the award since he'd been held the group together all these years. Well, every time, that made me mad, because every time Charlie hired somebody, he made sure they could do the work for him. He never was going to. And they would have to fight. Doyle Lawson can tell you this. Jimmy Goodrow can tell you this. Ricky Skaggs can tell you that Charlie didn't do any musical arrangements, and he didn't do any of the business. At that time, Lynn Holtzclaw was doing all the business for him. When I left, he had nobody left to do the business. I did all the business up until when John left. I had the whole load on my shoulders. I stayed another year. And I decided I just was tired of doing the same old, same old. I could not get Charlie to rehearse. I mean, he just wouldn't do it. And it was like pulling teeth. So when Tom Riggs got up and says, I think Charlie ought to get it, that upset me a lot. So I got up and stood up in front. Doyle Lawson was sitting right here. And I got up and I was looking out through the audience, and I said, "I'll tell you, folks, this is a decision you got to make." I said, "You can give the award to the people who built the machine, or you can give the award," and I pointed right at Charlie, "to the guy who rode it all the way to the bank." I said, "So do you want to give an award to the people who built the machine, or the guy who rode it to the bank? It's up to you." And Doyle Lawson said, "Tell him, Eddie. Tell him." He was sitting right there, and I'll never forget it. He said, "Tell him, Eddie, tell him." And I told him. And I believe had I not said that, they'd have gave Charlie that award, and Tom Gray and John Duffy and myself would have not seen anything out of that. And John Duffy and I are the ones who put the work in it. And I was the one who changed it into something from not doing Jimmy Martin and the Osborne Brothers material to doing our own material. Pete Roberts of Bluegrass Unlimited, if you ask him today, you say, "Pete, what was the country gentleman doing prior to Eddie Adcock entering the band?" And Pete will not deny the fact that they were Pete's words, they were Osborne brother clones. That's what the country gentlemen were. And they didn't get to say that. That's another person who should have been in the Hall of Honor with us. Pete Roberts every time I couldn't play, he actually played in the band before I did. And when I couldn't play, I'd call Pete to play the banjo. And Pete's on several records of me and him playing twin banjos. And he brought an immense amount of the material to the band. He was really a big part of the country gentleman. The country gentleman would have sounded a little different, I think, had it not been for Pete Roberts. I never do an interview or an article, no matter who I'm doing it for or where I'm doing it. I never do any article without mentioning Pete Roberts. The fifth member of the country gentleman was Pete Kuykendall. He's Pete Roberts then, that was his stage name. But Pete Kuykendall, I felt like, was just as big a part of the country gentleman as me and Charlie and John. And I'm not omitting Tom Gray because Tom Gray I love and is a great bass player. But I loved Ed Ferris too. He was a great bass player, and he didn't know the stuff on the bass that Tom Gray knew. But one of the ways that Tom made it to the Hall of Honor, and he deserves it. He deserves it. Don't get me wrong. This is a really touchy point for me because I love Tom Gray. But he was with a seldom seen, and Ed Ferris wasn't with anybody important. And Tom Gray was with a seldom seen. So it was those who have get more, and those who have not get nothing or get less.
Tom was on your first albums.
And Tom was on, I'm going to get to that. Tom came with us and spent, from the first Folkways album, Country Songs Old and New. No, maybe was that Tom Gray or was that Pete?
Tom was on the first albums, I believe. Album.
Okay, I didn't know he was on the very first one, but I guess he was. I hope you know what you're talking about on that, because I could have swore it was Jim Cox, but maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, Tom was with us from 71 till 73 or something like that, or 70 to 73. And then he was a vital part of it, and everybody loved Tom with the country gentleman. And I do believe this, that more people love Tom Gray with the country gentleman than any other bass player that ever worked with the country gentleman. I'll say that. But Tom Gray was there for 3 years, and me and John and Charlie were there for 12 years together as a unit. So that's the reason I say, we didn't die when Tom left in 73. In other words, we continued
60.
on. 63. We continued on and grew and grew and grew, larger all the time. And that's why I say Pete Roberts, John Duffy, Charlie Waller, and Eddie Adcock was as important. Those four were equally important from a material standpoint, from a work standpoint, from ideas to make the band grow. Pete was full of ideas. He helped us in every way. He recorded our albums. It was just Pete Roberts should have been in that plaque that was given to the country gentleman. I'll always say that. I'll die and go away from you saying that. But you're going to edit this tape, and if you edit it out, so be it. But anyway, but I did say what I thought about that. What would you like for me to say now?
I think they
love
could
Tom, though. I love you.
I think
you
they
were
could
a big part.
describe the country gentleman. There was something about that configuration with Tom in the band playing bass that people did love a lot, and for that reason they've ended up being called the classic gentleman. That's what made the impression on people's minds. It was like you guys were, it was synergy. It was you guys were more than the sum of your parts somehow.
I know.
I mean, everybody was a fabulous musician and worthy of lots and lots of recognition, but together you really did something special. And not only was the music fabulous, but you changed the direction, more or less, that Bluegrass had been going on. And you didn't just head back to the hills with it.
No, I think I did that when I come in the band. I don't think that happened in '61 with Tom, because Tom come in the band. We were already on that route when Tom joined the band.
It was everything.
But I will say this, that the people did make their choice, but it was another reason for that was when all that was going down, Tom was highly visible with the Seldom Seen, and that helped Tom achieve that goal. I'm not saying that Tom wasn't probably the most popular bass player, and certainly I love him, and I love everything he did. I'm just trying to get everything said the way I think it is. And after all, this interviewing me and my thoughts and my things, I'm not taking anything away from anybody. Like I said, there was two bass players that I really loved that worked with the Country Gentleman. And I have to say it the way I'm saying it in order to be able to sleep at nights and face myself. I loved Ed Ferris. I think he was a wonderful person, and I bet that popped, didn't it? He was a wonderful person, and a great bass player. Did Tom Gray know more bass? Yes. Could he sing better? Yes. Did he give anybody any trouble? Not to speak of. Did Ed Ferris? No. It's just I'm giving my opinion the way it is.
Well, their bass playing was apples versus oranges. Anyway.
Yeah, well, Tom was
played lots of notes.
Tom was more of a jazz-oriented bass player, and Ed was just basically
just a good
Boom
solid.
Boom was a good nickname for him. They finally nicknamed him Boom Boom Ferris. I used to call him Dum Dum Ferris, because he called me names too. But I said, Boom Boom, hell, you Dum Dum. But anyway, that's another day and another quarter. But I just speaking it the way I thought it should go. That's all. And the next thing I did after the Country Gentleman, loving that band and being the most emotional part of my life, far as the most creative time of my life, far as getting what I do well known across the country. That was my vehicle for doing that. And then I got tired and wanted to do something else. And I started playing what we call Newgrass. Now, we never named our band Newgrass Revival. It was second generation, named by Jimmy Goodrow. But the music we played, we called it Newgrass. And we called that within the band. That's what we called it. And I don't know that anybody, Sam Bush or anything, picked up on that term that we called it. We had a couple names for it, but Newgrass is the one that stuck most of the time. Sam almost got known for creating Newgrass because he called his band Newgrass Revival. But then there's records laying around. There's examples, and there's proof in the pudding. First off, we got Newgrass Revival their first job. Second generation did. We were already playing when Sam started Newgrass Revival. And for those who would want to proof of what I say, go out and find an old album called Head Cleaner. It was an album that I put out that I was trying to lay something down in a bluegrass format that was completely, totally different than anything that had ever been played before. And if you listen to that album today, it's still, I don't know if they'll ever come around to that. Few bands have, few haven't. Few have, most of them have not. And I don't think they, most of them want to go that route. First off, it scares them, and also the audience won't like it because it makes them think. People, the best to a person comes from this, what they understand. If they got to think about it and learn to like it, it has to wear in. They don't want to put a lot of thought in it. It has to wear in. Now this old good old boy, I've had people come up to me and tell me, actually have nerve enough to tell me I can't play that banjo the way I played it when I was with a country gentleman. I was really a better banjo player then. Well, I didn't even know then. I wouldn't have understood what I was playing with the second generation. If I'd have heard me, 4 or 5 years later, I'd say, what is that he's playing? It would be me 4 or 5 years later. If I was looking back, I wouldn't even know what it was. I got playing syncopation on syncopation and playing lines that were just foreign to anything in bluegrass. And so the people that couldn't understand that, they'd think I was losing my touch. But I'd spent all of these hours of growing and developing what I do. And these people that liked me with a country gentleman were ready and willing to think I was losing my touch when I was growing, To people, you are what they understand is the best. There's no such thing as the best musician, because if you do that, you reduce art to a mechanical thing of some sort, or I don't even know the word to use here, but you can't reduce art to a best. And these art books here are good examples of what I'm talking about. Martha's got stacks of them. We just took off the table because we're getting ready to move. Got stacks of them. Actually, they stay out here all the time, but she didn't want them in the video. Different artists. I love them all equally. There are different styles. They're totally different. But to some people, they'd say, oh, that old Earl Scruggs, or if it was paints, they like, oh, that old Van Gogh, he's the best one. You can't beat him. I know Van Gogh. The others are just beginning to discover what that boy knew. That's their thought. That's their makeup. That's the way people think. There's no such thing as the best musician. And kids need to know that more than anybody, because if there is a best, you don't let when you're fighting only against yourself, you grow in leaps and bounds. when you think that you can play enough to become the best of all the other artists, then you're thinking wrong. That's not a correct way of thinking. You get to be the best by answering the call. When you get that thought in your mind, to a line in your mind, a lead line in your mind, or a lick in your mind that come in there, you can either pursue that or say, "Oh, it's too hard. I can't do that." Well, then you're not the best, because you just went out and copied somebody, and you didn't follow the God's gift of that little lick. "Oh no, that's too hard. I can't do that. If I had somebody to show it to me, I could, but no, I can't do that." And the good old boy says, "Well, nobody can play that banjo like J.D. Crowe, or nobody can play that banjo like Earl Scruggs, or no blah blah, and on and on. He's the best." All they're saying is, "That's who I like the most." But you better not tell them that, because they're ready to fight over the fact that he's the best. Not the fact that they like him the most, but the fact that he's the best. See? So they can't, it's a whole other thing. But the kids need to know you're competing with yourself. It's like a race car driver doesn't race the people on the track. He races himself. He has to race himself, because how is he going to get the ultimate out of his skills as a driver? Is to be the best he can be right now. Copying Sam Jones over there in the next car is not going to help him at all. He's got to drive the best he can drive. He's racing two things. He's racing his skill level against that track that he's on that day. Temperatures, everything involved. Music ain't no different. You gotta race yourself. What he's doing over there is not what the question is. The question is I just had this thought and I didn't follow it through. So I'm not the best, and I never will be the best until I pursue every idea I have and follow through with it and complete it. Am I the best? No, because I don't do that. Is anybody the best they can be? I don't think so. I think we all fall short. Every one of us. Every person that ever lived falls short of being the best they can be. They'll never be the best they can be. There's just not enough time to be the best you can be. And you'll have other things that are natural things in life that are pulling at you to do, for you to do. You'll never be allowed to be the best you can be. We all fall short of the throne of being the best. Totally short. So, but anyway, get that little morsel in for the kids, because they need to know that. Be the best you can be, not the best everybody else. Don't try to beat JD at what he does. Beat yourself. Try to get the best you can be. Anyway, the second generation went on in 73. I met this young lady. Second generation started in 1971. In 1973, I met Martha, and we were doing our own sound. We've had a sound company since 71. And I hired her to be an engineer to operate sound for our band. And in the same year, she became part of the band. And we got a real popular man here in town. Now he's popular, but we taught a guy by the name of Bill Vorndick, and he did our sound for us after Martha quit and joined the band. Martha became a fresh part of the second generation. She's learned through the years too. She's trying to be the best she can be. She won't ever achieve that either, but she's trying to be. If you listen to Martha on the 1973 record, now she was good at folk music before she joined Bluegrass, but Bluegrass is a whole nother ball game, and she had to learn to sing all over again another way. And you listen to a 73 record of Martha singing and listen to a 1903, 203 record of Martha singing, you'll hear a much more polished singer, someone who really has it down real good, and I will not say she's the best. I will say she's my favorite singer. And I know the difference between saying one's best at something and one's favorite. But I don't understand why bluegrass people hasn't focused on her more. I think it's because bluegrass people, with the exception of Alison Krauss and maybe one or two others, they like for people to yell when they sing. Martha likes to sing, and not yell, sing. And that will not, you can get to the top in bluegrass a lot quicker if you yell some. And Martha will not yell. I don't think she'll ever start yelling. Will you?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Well, but she's the greatest rhythm player I've ever worked with. It's solidifying what I do. Lead players do exactly that. They lead. They get on the edge of the beat. They play right up on top of the beat. And rhythm players play back a little ways from the top of the beat. Lead is you play the lick as soon as you can without speeding or dragging. Rhythm, you stay just below that, and you stay there. And some players, bluegrass, if you take any record, even in the olden days, and you take the record and you set it on the beginning of the song and set the metronome to that, and you can try this. Anybody who wants to try this at home is welcome to do it. And then go to the end of the song, and it's going to be faster. It's going to be faster. Martha is like a rock of Gibraltar. She doesn't let me do that. I think it's a wonderful thing. There's a natural little sway upward, but not to the degree Flatt & Scruggs was. Flatt & Scruggs, I remember, and Bill Monroe, I remember many times showing people that at parties and stuff. I say, tap your toe to this now. And then I put it over to the end of the record, and I said, now tap your toe, and they have to go like there, a lot faster. And that just meant that Lester and some of the boys that got known as good rhythm players were not, she was classically trained. That didn't hurt her. Where, you maintain a timing that's just exactly right. And if the timing moves, it's it's written in there. It's not just done because you didn't know it was done. It's written in. And so that didn't hurt her at all. She took her right hand from two wonderful rhythm players, two of the other best rhythm players in their day and time that I ever worked with, and that was Bill Harrell and Charlie Waller.
And Mac Wiseman
And Mac
also.
Wiseman. Yeah, Mac Wiseman.
And Jimmy Martin, of course.
Okay, well.
There were some really good ones. Today, rhythm guitar is not seen as prestigious a job as playing lead on your guitar or any other instrument, but it's an art, and it's a necessary art. And there are some wonderful rhythm guitarists out there who simply, maybe they're taken for granted a lot. But to me, it's an art that I'm happy to pursue. I don't play much lead even at home, but on stage my job is to provide a framework and different textures even for him, something that he can rely on to come back to when he can take his flights of fancy, and he'll know exactly what's going on, exactly where he is when he comes back from out of the stratosphere. And if I want to go someplace with him, if the piece calls for that, we both can go out on a limb, and you may rely on that telepathy he was talking about to come back and be in the same place. But I'm a singer, and I'm a rhythm guitar player, and I'm very proud to call myself a rhythm player.
She's the best that I've ever worked with, period. bar none.
Well,
Is-
Martha, what was it like to come in with this bunch of the second generation when you first met Eddie?
Well, if I had been able to be an alchemist and sort of create what I had envisioned and hoped for, it's exactly what I would have created myself. And here it was, lo and behold, already done, and there it was, and I just happened to drop into the middle of it. I had come from, of course, as a kid, you listen to everything that's on the radio. The country was on in the afternoons when you come home from school, and you listen to that, waiting for the rock and roll to come on. And of course the classical music, and then I got interested in the folk music and the old-timey, and then it was a short hop to bluegrass, and I liked all kinds of music too, just like Eddie did. And it was kind of my dream to see them all put together somehow. And I'd been trying to do that myself, and I'd moved to Nashville I'd written some songs and was writing a lot more, and I thought Nashville was the place to be, because that was a place that such a thing might happen, that you see all these wonderful things come together that you had dreamed about putting together. And it seemed to be the right time. And I came to Nashville to work doing instrument inlay, pearl inlay and repair with a guy named Randy Wood, who had a place called the Old Time Picking Parlor on 2nd Avenue North. And on one side was a music store, upstairs was the Luthery shop, and next door, connected, was a place where they had music at nights, a nightclub, if you will. They sold beer and all that sort of thing. And everybody in Nashville who was acoustic, bluegrass or country or whatever would come through there, and it was the gathering place. It was sort of the left bank of Nashville. And it was just fabulous. And in there jamming on any given day might be Eddie and Roy Acuff and Oswald, the dobro player.
Sam
maybe
Bush playing with them.
Sam and Norman Blake. Just everybody in the world would come through. And that's where I met Eddie. Within a very
Vassar
short
Clemens.
time, Vassar. Within a very short time of moving to Nashville, I met Eddie. And there again, we connected on a level that most people may not think really exists, but we sort of were drawn to each other because we felt each other. We almost felt like we'd known each other in another lifetime. And the next day, I went out to hear his band that was playing in Clarksville at Austin Peay University, and it hit me like a ton of bricks that this is the band that I had been looking for. And of course, Eddie was sort of pretty much the guy that I had been looking for and didn't know it, and we were just together from that time on, literally. And we've been together 24 hours a day, you could say, ever since then. And 3 years, it took us 3 years to get married.
We lived in sin the first 3 years.
The families were starting to look at us kind of funny, and that was in the early 70s, and they still looked at you funny back then. So we've been married since 76.
I had long hair and an old hippie. Still an old. I'm an older hippie now. I just don't have any hair.
We were both hippies, so we enjoyed the 60s and the 70s. But it was the 70s were a great time. It was a great time to be a free spirit in bluegrass, because at that point, these influences were creeping in. The rock influence and more of the jazz influence was creeping in, and just there was a foment going on that was just fabulous to be a part of, and the second generation to me was it. And soon there was the Newgrass Revival, and then there was the Seldom Seen, and there was these other bands that sort of together all created a scene, and it was a great thing. And about this time, the bluegrass festivals were growing as well. There were more festivals, and the crowds were swelling, and everybody was beginning to be attracted to them because of not just for the music, but because it was a kind of a scene. And when that happens, sometimes there are some people that come there for the scene who are only interested in the scene, and sometimes they create a little dissension. They might even be an undesirable element. And that began to happen in bluegrass. You'd have the conservative people over here that were interested only in the music, and then in the traditional side of the music particularly, and then you'd have what we'd sometimes call the dancing bears, who were the hippies that were interested in the newgrass aspect of it. And that was okay until you started mixing in other people, like certain groups of people. Well, I don't mean to disparage bikers, but bikers started coming in to the bluegrass festivals as
not behaving.
As a place just to do their thing, and it just didn't all work together. And some things occurred over a couple of summers.
Murders.
Yeah, several murders happened, and so promoters started shutting down on the music, and they started shutting down on what they thought was causing all this trouble, and that was sort of the newgrass element of it. And at that point, the conservative element of bluegrass began to dominate again. And it's only in the last few years that anything has been allowed back into bluegrass that even smacked of anything besides bluegrass. You see, back in the 70s, we were starting to use electric instruments. We had some electric basses started coming in, of course, but we were using electric guitars. Eddie would play his Telecaster on stage. We would bring amplifiers in there, and Bill Monroe would look at him like, "What are you doing?" But it was okay. People were learning to like this sort of thing until all these bad things started happening at the festivals, and the progressive stuff started getting shut out. So that kind of left us at loose ends for a while.
Back to the core.
And Eddie and I started to play other types of venues besides the bluegrass ones, and that was fine too. As a matter of fact, there was a period of time when we were pretty much all electric. We called ourselves Adcock, and Eddie in 1978 invented and built in 78 and 79 an instrument called a gitbow, which was basically a solid body electric guitar and banjo, a double neck instrument that had the little banjo was, the head of the banjo was, he fashioned that out of a practice pad, a drum head, and the banjo resonated through an acoustic chamber that was routed out in the body of the guitar. Well, this satisfied him very well, his urge to play both banjo and guitar. As a matter of fact, he could jump from one to the other
While you're talking, I'll ease out.
in
Rolling,
mid phrase. Eddie, your microphone is. This is Eddie's gitbow. He built it mostly not in a shop even. At the time, Fender Instruments was sponsoring us. They had given me an acoustic guitar, a prototype that was a beautiful instrument, and Eddie expressed an interest in building an instrument that had not yet ever been made. He invented this in his own mind, and they gave him a blank. I think this is ash wood. They gave him a blank that you would have made a precision bass out of. And Eddie promptly sketched this out on the blank and cut it out on a bandsaw and got a couple of Schecter brand necks, the Fender style necks, and made this thing work. And with the switches, he can go from the banjo to the guitar, or he can have both of them at the same time, and the banjo will even act as a drone.
Or switch too.
And yes, he's invented lots of different electronics, not only for this, but for other instruments as well. There's an instrument called, an electronic instrument called an echoplex, which was one of the first things by which you could have echo separate from, say, an amplifier, reverb or something. And you would adjust the rate of echo with a little switch on the top. Well, he developed with an old foot pedal a means to control that with his foot the rate of the speed of the echo as well as the intensity and all of that and the volume, so he can control that independently of this instrument, so that he could concentrate on doing this with his hands and doing that with his feet. And
Well, yeah, what it was one of the old D. Armand foot pedals where it had a tone control on it that slid left and right, and a volume control that slid up and down. Well, the tone control left and right, I took a choke rod for an automobile and mounted it to the shaft on the inside of the pedal that goes left or right, and run it over to the Echoplex, and the slider on the Echoplex, you would slide with your fingers, and that would control the speed of the Echoplex. So echo. So if your song was this tempo, ting 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 ting, and you wanted to get some special effects, harmonizing with yourself and everything, you'd set the Echoplex to where the echo was going. Okay, and any given song, if the song speeded up, you'd have to speed the Echoplex up, and you'd have to know how to do that. Well, if you have a foot pedal, you got the volume knob that turns on the Echoplex and turns off the Echoplex. As far as it actually working, the volume knob turned it on and off. So what you did was you back off the pedal. It don't affect your guitar. You're still hearing the guitar. You back it off and you move it forward just a little bit so you don't hear a yarn yarn that you when you're moving the slider. And then you push your volume down and check the speed of it. See if it ain't exactly right with the band. You can feel it. So I was able to totally control it. A friend of mine, Danny Gatton, spent thousands and thousands of dollars on putting little motors in to do that. And when he saw that I had 5,000 times more control of mine, I had total control of mine. He had 5 separate controls. He had 5 buttons he could switch and change those little motors, and he could only change the tempo 5 times. I could vary my tempo all the way through the whole layer of tempos. Just not a set another one and a set other one, just a variation that anywhere I wanted on that slider. I could move that slider with my foot anywhere I wanted it, so I would not have to punch buttons and have all this massive junk hanging off my instrument, which I didn't have room for. But so many of the people, inventors, overthink. You overthink is not usually going to work. It's always try to figure when you're trying to come up with an idea, the simplest way first. Always this, is there any easier way to do it than that? What about if I do this? Or what if I do that? Not, hey, let's get 5 motors and put it on here and have it go and stop here, and then push another button and go and stop there. The simplest way to do that, a slider, a choke rod, and a pedal to move back and forth with you. Where you don't even have to do anything with your hands. You just do it with your feet. You got your feet free. You don't have your hands free. You're playing. So that's basically how that worked out. But anyway, this thing, I remember one of my favorite banjo players is Bela Fleck. I like all musicians who try to do something on their own. And I remember jamming with him one day with this thing a long time ago when after I'd been over in country, I think I'd already been working with David Allen Coe as his band leader, me and Martha both. And I remember I didn't have a banjo and he wanted to jam, and I didn't have a banjo with me, and I said, well, I got my gitbo. You know, if you don't play real loud, you'll be able to hear it and we can jam some. And this thing surprised him and surprised me too, because I was playing about as loud as he was on this thing, and he was using a regular banjo.
You mean you were playing this acoustically?
I was playing acoustically, not plugged in at all. And I haven't set it up like they don't sound good now. The string's off of it. You don't have a string on it, so it's terrible sound right now. I haven't played it in since I left David Allen Coe. I haven't played it. So
Actually, when we came back to Bluegrass, well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Somewhere in there, while we were in our electric period, we were playing a show at the Station Inn, just as a duo. We had a band too. Sometimes we played as a little trio with just a drummer, who, when he hit the bass and I would hit the bass strings on the guitar, it sort of created the effect of having a bass with us. So that was an interesting
really.
trio. But we were playing just a show duo at the Station Inn, and David Allen Coe was sort of going through a bluegrass phase, and he popped in at the Station Inn and he heard us playing, and we talked a little bit with him that night, and somehow after that night he decided he wanted to have us in his band, and he got his limo driver to search all over town for us the next day, and he hired us, and we worked with him for I think 15 or 16 months or something like that. And so Eddie got to play his gitbow. As a matter of fact, when David found out that he played lots of instruments, poor Eddie would often be out on stage with this and a mandolin and something else hung around his neck at the same time.
I've had acoustic guitar and mandolin all hanging off of me at one time, and actually playing them on stage.
And then he would maybe say, "Eddie, the guy hadn't got those monitors right. Go over there and fix those."
Yeah, and I'd like get all the stuff off of him and get off stage and go out and set the PA, because he knew I had a sound company.
But that was a very interesting time, because in 1984 and 85, David Allen Coe was having mega hits in country music.
That was because of us, honey.
Well, I don't know, but
only kidding.
It was an interesting time. It was quite different from anything we'd ever done before.
Well, he too.
Playing stadiums and things, and shows with Willie Nelson and Hank Williams Jr. and having Tanya Tucker open for us and all that. It was, the whole lifestyle was so different, and the way David lived it, it was just it got to be a little bit too much for us. And so after we left David, we came back to Bluegrass, and at that point, having gone through what I call the Bluegrass Wars, when newgrass music was ultimately rejected because they wanted to just back off and get more conservative. At that point, Eddie sort of, I think you did actually spread the word that you would not play any electric music because we were coming back to Bluegrass, and you didn't want to offend people or hurt their feelings or hurt their ears or anything. And so we came back to Bluegrass. We formed a band.
I said I would not play any electric bluegrass as Eddie and Martha Adcock. That's what it was. As the Eddie Adcock Band would never play any. That's what it was at the time. I said the Eddie Adcock Band would not play any electric instruments. And
so we went to.
At that time. We're not the Eddie Adcock Band now, though.
When we left David Allen Coe, we left Nashville for a while and went back up to Virginia. His mother was getting up in age, and so we lived in her yard in our motorhome for a while and thought about what to do. And it just so happens that 20 miles away from Scottsville in Charlottesville, there was a band called Cloud Valley, and I read in the Charlottesville Daily Progress newspaper that they were getting ready to disband. And we had met their bass player, Missy Raines, and so I said, "Eddie, why don't you call up Missy and let's get her to be our bass player if we're going to play bluegrass music." And he did, and she had just gone back to college, and so she quit school to come play with us, and we were together for 8.5 years, and Missy was a great girl, great bass player, a wonderful person to work with, was very committed to what we did, but we never played any electric music with the group, which first of all was called Talk of the Town.
Mm-hmm.
And then that sort of morphed into the Eddie Adcock Band later on, because it seemed as though name recognition was more important than a band name.
Well, the record company made us change it, and they said, "Who's Talk of the Town?" Nobody knows Talk of the Town. They know Eddie Adcock. They
So
know
about
Martha
the time
Adcock,
that-
but they don't
about-
know Talk of the Town.
About the time they were becoming familiar with Talk of the Town, we changed back to Eddie Adcock Band. We've always done things backwards anyway. We like it that way. But we've been playing bluegrass ever since, and after we parted ways with Missy, we played with a few other people as bass players and even brought in mandolin and fiddle. But I think in the back of our minds what we wanted to do at that point was really change, and so we went back to playing as a duet. Now, we did this for a while in 1976 and 77 when we dropped the second generation. But it didn't work quite as well back then. I don't think that people were as willing to accept a duet in the music. They just wanted, at that point, to be traditional again. They wanted the straightforward and five-piece bluegrass band. So,
All men mostly.
yeah, man. But this time the duet has seemed to work much, much better. I think other influences have been accepted into bluegrass to a much greater extent than they were back then. Curiously enough, though, especially since Bill Monroe has passed away, there has been a huge wave of traditionalism. I think everybody that was leaning that way had decided that they wanted to be the standard bearer for Bill Monroe's music and Earl Scruggs' music, even though Earl isn't gone yet. And people want to make sure that's kept alive, and I do too, because it's very valuable. But I think there's still a lot of room for how should I put this? If expansion maybe, or still some room for exploration in bluegrass.
There has to be exploration. It may not sell, but it has to be the exploring, and out of all exploring will come one or two morsels that will be keepers, and the rest will will die.
This thing's getting heavy.
And if you don't explore, you don't grow. If you don't grow, you die. And I mean, music will die if it doesn't grow. It has to grow, even if it's microscopically. It's got to move. It can't sit still. And I know there's bluegrass people out there. They go around. I've had people meet me in the hall at IBMA and said they're ruining their music, and I say, "What do you mean what's ruining our music?" And they said they're changing their music. They're going to ruin it. And all it would be is some band just playing a little bit different, and that'd scare the dickens out of the old hardcore bluegrass lover. And I'd have to remind them, I say, don't try to stop them from growing. Don't try to stop the growth. Just don't go see that band that you don't like. I said, nothing will grow unless it's supported. I mean, if you don't put your dime in there, then it's not going to go any further than it is right now. But a few elements will come out of there that people can use. So don't try to stop growth. That's ignorance. You got to let it grow where it can grow. And I think eventually, I mean, as bad as people would hate to hear me say this, there'll be people adding all kinds of stuff to bluegrass music. And those people out there that are hardcore, they got to look at it this way. The only way you can hear traditional country music today basically is because of the new country music today. The traditional country music had seen its best days of selling. It wasn't going to sell anymore to speak of. It was getting actually smaller than bluegrass. Like it is today, it's actually smaller than bluegrass. It don't sell as much as bluegrass does. So what happens is, the way you get to hear some good old-time country music is the golden oldie thing. They know the roots. Every now and then they'll pull up the roots, which will be an old Hank Williams tune that we can all love. Well, you wouldn't even hear that if the music had died completely. You wouldn't even hear that. You wouldn't even get that. And they put these records back out because they'll get the old traditional music and put it back out, not because it sells so much, but because it's the thing for a record company to do. They'll sell enough. They don't have to pay for the rights of it again. It's already in their repertoire or whatever, in their vaults. And they can put it out and sell a few here and there and make it pay for itself. And you can go out and buy it. You wouldn't even be able to go out and buy it if country music was dead totally. So eventually, bluegrass can't go on like this forever. It's not in. There's no way that it can go on like this forever. Somebody's going to bust it wide open, and it's going to take off, and it's going to be like, when the hottest thing come down the pike hits, and everybody will move that direction. The whole industry will move that direction, and the people that are hardcore lovers will say, "Oh my, oh, they're ruining the music. The music, well, there ain't no bluegrass left. That crap they're playing on the radio stations today." It certainly ain't bluegrass. You don't hear a bluegrass tune out there. But there's still, to be able to say that, they would have been listening to those radio stations now, wouldn't they? I don't listen to it because they don't play no bluegrass. Well, that's what they're saying about country now. I don't listen to it because they don't play no country. But if they don't listen to it, how do they don't know that they're not playing any country, first off? And the only way they're going to get to hear that old stuff is about every 4 or 5 tunes that goes by on a radio station. Most of the stations will throw in an oldie, 1 or 2 oldies. But you can't, there's nothing on, the Bible says anything non-moving will die, is dead. The Bible says it's got to have movement, growth, in other words. You got to grow. They didn't put this thing up here just to frame and keep it the way it is forever. They put it up here to use. God give it to us to use. It's got to be used, or our whole race will die. If we don't use it, the race will die. The people will not, they'll cease to be on the earth. You've got to use this thing. And art is the way we express ourselves. And through that expression, we have our clothing styles. We have the way we talk. We have the sayings we use, little words that come up, that the clean words, the dirty words, everything that comes from art. And bluegrass, mark my word, kids, you'll see that it will not stay the same. By the time you're an adult, the music will be different. It will not be what it is today. And you old guy sitting out there hating me saying this, I'm sorry, pal, but it's a way of the world. It has to be what it is. And you either got to set and adjust to like it, or you'll be a miserable old man going around making everybody mad because of your ornery ways. That's the way it works. There's nothing you can do about it. Now, I found the right ingredients. I had a dancing bass player who had long hair down to his butt, the same as I did, and he'd run from this side of the stage over to this side of the stage playing electric bass, very loud. And it's funny, all the blue hairs, they wouldn't put us on till last. It's when they put all the newgrassers on. Sam Bush and his band and us and our band, Second Generation, were basically the only 2 bands at that first, when it first started. We later on had Breakfast Special and various bands that were sort of newgrass. But the only thing, of all those bands, the only ones I called newgrass was Second Generation and Newgrass Revival. And they were true newgrass. Breakfast Special was doing just weird stuff. It wasn't so much rock oriented. It was just weird stuff. And so I had a chance to do all the different kinds of music I wanted to do and survive at it for a while because the college kids picked up on what I was doing. And I had the support of the college kids, and it was funny at nights. I was going on last, like I said a minute ago. All the blue hairs, a sea of blue hairs would leave the stage when they announced my name. And then all of these hippies would come move in, and it'd be just a party sometimes play till 4 o'clock in the morning on some of those shows. Sometimes all night at Aunt Minnie's farm, all night long. You know, play till the sun. The code was play till the sun comes up, and then we'll quit. But it was a wonderful time in my life, and I do miss those days very much. I've always felt, though I understand, I've always felt like I was, at least I discovered one cannot do what he wants to do totally on this earth and survive at it, you know, I mean, in art. Because I actually, when Martha and I come back to acoustic right now, I get an urge to do some things that I don't dare do because I don't want to. I play to the people who are in front of the stage, and I'm not going to push that. But so far, I'm not going to. They're not able to like just anything, so I'm not going to try to sit up there and commit suicide. I'm going to try to play something I think they'll like, and I'll continue to do that. That's not to say that I still may, at some point in my life, start another band playing this instrument again and call it something else, not Eddie and Martha Adcock. I'll just call it something else. But as long as Eddie and Martha are playing, if I play this at all, I'll just pick it with her and I and show the people, you know, what he can do, but not be rock-oriented. I'll just do an old 1950s instrumental on here, you know. I won't play no rock riffs. I won't do that to them. Although I miss those too. But I'll just play an old, you know, Speedy West and Jimmy Bryant thing or something, Sugarfoot Rag or something on this, and then take a break on the banjo and let them see the difference between the two. But I won't go into any rock and roll on it. I'm not going to do them that way because they're not able to like that stuff, and it's not up to me to decide for them what they do or don't like. So I won't ever do that to them.
How did you create this Bluegrass? I mean, I'm just curious about it. It's just like it's this huge chasm between the two.
Yeah, well, the way it was created was I did what I loved. I loved everything, so I put it all into one art form and called it Newgrass. That's the way it come about. It started, its roots were in the Country Gentleman, at the tail end of the Country Gentleman. I recorded a couple things with the Country Gentleman, Tchaikovsky's Dream Concerto, Exodus, Mrs. Robinson, you know, Simon Garfunkel. I can't remember all of them, but I started doing things like that right at the end of the Country Gentleman. And then when I got over into second generation, I was doing a lot of stuff that Martha and I wrote, at least 5 per album, and minimum 5 per album that we wrote. But the rest would be things like, you know, a classical tune or an old rock tune, you know, old rock and roll tune, done up just a little bit different. We still do today a song called The Breeze. Fact is, it just got re-recorded by, and he's doing it on stage now, Larry Cordell. But we first did that with Second Generation back in 1973, I think it was.
And who were Second Generation?
The Second Generation was me and Martha and Scotty Flowers on the drums, Johnny Castle on the bass, Gene Johnson on the mandolin of Diamond Rio, and a fiddle player that works with David Bromberg now in New York called Jeff Weiser. And that was the first, Second Generation. And it's a while. Now the bass player is working with the Nighthawks. That's a rock and roll band. But we stay in touch with those people, and we someday intend to have a reunion down here at the Station Inn or somewhere, and get that whole band back together. I know the owner of the Station Inn won't come in that night because that band has drums in it, so He won't show up at night. I'll let you have it for your reunion, but I ain't coming. Oh, Lord. But anyway.
Okay, we're rolling.
Okay, where are we? Good old bluegrass lick. Then we, after second generation, we went over to the Eddie and Martha in several different configurations. And during that time, we've already talked about the Eddie and Martha thing. During that time, we started up a group on the side called the Masters. And that originated in the mind of Martin Hurley of CMH Records in California. And that band was made up of me and Martha, Jesse McReynolds, Josh Graves, and Kenny Baker, and Missy Raines on bass. And
Actually, it started out because you and Jesse McReynolds wanted to do an album together.
yeah, that's right. It started out because of that.
We were all on CMH Records, and when we took the idea to the president of CMH, whose name was Martin Hurley, he got to thinking about it. He was always had something that was different from everybody else, some gimmicky thing he wanted to do. Matter of fact, he was the first guy who ever wanted to do bluegrass rap, but that's a whole other thing. Anyway, these guys wanted to do an album together, and Martin got the notion that, well, since Josh Graves and Kenny Baker are also on the label, why don't you all do an album together? And they thought, okay, that sounds like a good idea. Everybody's really, these are
Good friends.
good friends, great pickers. Sounds like a good idea. Then they got the idea, Martin got the idea. He said, well, why don't you guys wear tuxedos? And I don't know how they ever got that past
White
the guys.
tuxedos.
Yeah, white.
I still own one that I can't wear.
With a pink tie and cummerbund and a lavender tie and cummerbund. So somehow they got that past them, especially Kenny Baker. I don't know how they ever got that past Baker, but they did.
He hated it, putting
And-
that suit on.
And it just, and they made a first album which was all instrumental. Matter of fact, it was instrumentals that the guys wrote themselves. And that did very well. CMH Records has wonderful distribution worldwide, and they're in truck stops, and they're so available. So that did real well, and they did a second album too that there was some singing as well as instrumentals and kind of Western swing flavored bluegrass, and that did real well. And in the meantime, Martin Hurley's son David was working with an agency in California called International Creative Management. And so they got it in their heads that we should book these guys some really big shows. We should take bluegrass into community concert series and places where it absolutely has never been before. We'll just slip it in under the respectability radar, and we'll just get a ton of money, and they'll never know what hit them. And so we were playing shows with in community concerts where we'd be there one week, and Itzhak Perlman would be there the next, and it was really, really neat. And
We were listed with that agency right between Dean Martin.
yeah, Dean Martin and somebody else.
Yeah.
So that was quite an experience too. We played places like the Sun Dome in Phoenix, and it was pretty outrageous, and we had a good time. And
We're rolling.
let's see,
So you were in the Sun Dome or something.
yeah, it was just the Masters was a unique experience, and we played the big shows that it took 10 years for bluegrass to get back into, I guess, with people like Alison Krauss. But everything we do, we try to enhance the respectability of bluegrass. I mean, we don't set hay bales out on the stage, but we don't really mind if somebody else does that. But that's not really what we're about. We're about preserving the tradition of bluegrass and also making room in there somewhere for it to grow a little bit. And we're about playing to as many different kinds of audiences as we possibly can, whether it's bluegrass festivals or little tiny clubs or river boats or the Sun Dome in Phoenix or Carnegie Hall or the Kennedy Center or
Yeah, we played all those
or
places.
wherever. Because I'll tell you why, because so many people in this country have not been exposed to bluegrass, and it's such a worthwhile music. It's one of our truly American things that we have, that we've run across a lot of people who, when they're introduced to bluegrass for the first time, say, and this is interesting, they, as if it were already within them, they say, I didn't know I liked bluegrass, as if the potential had always been there, and they just seeing it live had brought it out. Well, that's lots of fun to be able to do that kind of thing. It's a fascinating lifestyle. It's a rich way to live. I mean, whether or not you've got money, that's inconsequential practically. We live a rich life, and we're luckier because of it, and we hope everybody else who comes in contact with bluegrass feels lucky. You know, the bluegrass community is one of the best bunches of people that you could ever find anywhere. I'm talking about not only the musicians, but the fans and the people who conspire to have a bluegrass community, and there's also a bluegrass industry now, but it's a wonderful bunch of people. They take care of each other. There are people who do things that, like what we do. We partake in benefits. Say if one of the members of the bluegrass community is ill, and bluegrass pickers are infamous for not being able to afford such things as insurance, health insurance. We play benefits and we take care of folks.
Yeah, the bluegrass community, to me, are the true caring people. The most caring people are left, and the closest people to the way I was raised in the 50s, 40s, and the people back then. Today you'll see these people with their hand up, praising Jesus, you know, and this dunce look in their face. And they got their left hand over here taking the guy's wallet out of his back pocket. And at the festivals, our sound company did a couple of gospel festivals there for a while. And they had to announce on stage not to steal each other's chairs. Now, this is a gospel festival. I ain't never heard them have to say that at a bluegrass festival. And I've said all kinds of things brought to me at a bluegrass festival, including wallets full of money and credit cards and everything brought to me, and we'd make an announcement and get it returned. And if the people weren't there, it would be mailed to them. Nobody ever it's like nobody at a gospel festival ever loses anything. That's what it appears. And also our equipment. The bands, the gospel bands that are out there saying they're ministering to the Lord and to the people, His children, and all this. They stole our microphones and our direct boxes I just could not believe how much stuff. I'd always left my stuff laying out around because I'd only been doing bluegrass festivals in some country, and even the country festivals the people weren't like that. But the gospel festivals, I know why we have gospel festivals now, because those people really need help. They need help really bad, honestly. I mean, we have these little stickers. They have little peel-off stickers with our name, Adcock Audio, on it. And you could follow a line of those stickers. My kid brought it to my attention. You can follow a line of these stickers, Daddy, to them buses over there. They were taking my stuff off stage and carrying it on home and peeling that sticker off as they went and dropping it where it was. And that just doesn't happen to bluegrass people. Don't do that. They don't stand up there and do this all day long. But they don't steal. They're good for what they say. They're good as their word. I've never seen an argument in the station in bluegrass clubs like that. much less a fight. I've never even seen an argument. And they don't talk bad about one another. They talk good about one another. There is no community that I know of on this earth, on the planet at this time, as sweet and as nice and as gentle and as true and as faithful and filled with faith as the bluegrass community. And if anything holds me to continuing to play this kind of music, it's that I want to be part of those people, because that's just unbelievable. They're wonderful. By the way, I quit doing those gospel festivals. I still do the Bluegrass Gospel Festival at Bean Blossom, but the Somerville, West Virginia Festival, just a bunch of crooks showed up over there. I'm not saying that all gospel people are crooks, but at Somerville, West Virginia, you had all your major gospel groups over there, and they're the ones who were stealing our stuff. And I don't even have to watch it at a Bluegrass Festival. Them people ain't gonna take none of my stuff. Pretty cool. Pretty cool to be working with a bunch of honest people.
Eddie had heart bypass surgery July the 6th, 2004. And although he had turned old enough to have Medicare, there's still a lot of things, incidental things, that you end up needing a whole lot of money for when you have something like bypass surgery. And the bluegrass community really came to bat for us in terms of money, in terms of offers of help, in terms of prayer. It's just, I was flabbergasted. I knew that they were wonderful, but to actually be on the receiving end of it was just amazing. It's really beyond words.
Can't tell you.
They organized benefit shows for us here in Nashville, in the Washington D.C. area, and in the Houston area. And when some California people decided they wanted, we said, no, enough is enough. Y'all have been too good to us already. And they really helped us out through a tough time. And they do that for everybody. I mean, you may see a posting on the Bluegrass discussion group on the internet that somebody's having trouble, and immediately people jump to the assistance of that person or that family or whoever.
Nobody has to beg them. They're ready to do that.
They want to do that. They want to. They're good folks, and they really especially want to help these people that they treasure so much, the musicians and their fellow lovers of bluegrass music. And it's just a beautiful thing to see.
IBMA, one of the first things they did was establish a trust fund for the musicians, because they know they don't have health insurance, know they can't afford it. And one of the first things IBMA did was establish that. That's why another reason I like IBMA. It's just a wonderful organization.
They've done a lot of good things for bluegrass music, not only the trust fund, but they wangled us a bluegrass Grammy. We've got the International Bluegrass Music Museum. We've got a bluegrass chart in Billboard magazine now. We've got scads of things that we didn't have 10, 12 years ago that we only dreamed that we might someday have. And a lot of people have put a lot of work into it. I think the staff works hardest of all, but I know the people involved, say in the board, work quite hard too. But the membership of IBMA is all very involved, and IBMA is truly one of the best things that has happened to our music. Of course, it's like a sailboat. You're going to tack and yaw, and it's been a process of finding its way with the organization, because bluegrass is in the process of finding its way, which direction it's going to go in. I mean, who knows what it's ultimately going to find itself. Hopefully it's going to be, at least to a large part, what it was when it began.
I hope the people stay the same. I hope they don't change.
Yeah, I do too.